Ukraine today is joined by the Secretary of State for European Affairs of Portugal, Mr. Bruno Maçães. Mr. Secretary, thank you for joining us.
Pleasure.
Ukraine is very keen to get closer connection with the EU. Can you tell your assessment on how do the Ukrainian EU aspirations look like right now?
We're getting closer. Ukraine and the EU are getting closer a little bit every day. This is the important thing, the material aspect, not the rhetorical proclamations. We have a new association agreement, a new free trade agreement. Portugal ratified the agreement in record time. I think most countries did. I don't think there's any justification to postpone the implementation of the agreement. So things are moving, and we're getting closer together.
Well, one of the key elements which Ukraine is expecting from the EU is visa-free regime. Do you think we will see it anytime soon?
This is a rigorous process at EU level of a technical nature. We have to make sure that all the criteria are in place. There will be a report in about 2 weeks and then a political decision, but the crucial thing is the report, whether all the technical criteria were met in terms of law enforcement and security. So we shouldn't overdo the political aspect because I've followed processes like this in other countries, in the Balkans, in Turkey. It's always slow. But the important thing is that the European public opinion knows the criteria are being met. You have to realize this is important for us.
Also, the EU is expecting Ukraine to do a lot of reforms for various reasons, and the Ukraine's EU aspirations is one of them. You have spent a week in Ukraine. What is your assessment of the reformist activities of the Ukrainian government? Are they moving in the right direction? Are they making enough to achieve this?
That's right. I've been here for a week. I talked to government, parliament. I talked to lots of NGOs, think tanks, so I have a good view of the reform process. It's going ahead. I think we need to keep pushing a little bit. I know reform is very difficult. In Portugal, we had an IMF program until very recently, and I saw accompany that process very closely. We need to push. I don't think you need to reform everything at once, but you pick 3, 4 priorities, which are the priorities for your own public opinion, for your own public. Judiciary, more competition in the economy, a better, more efficient public sector. Let's say these 3, and then really make an important change there so that everyone can see. I think this is crucial to make the economy stronger and to get public support for the transition and the reform process.
When you're saying we need to push, does that mean that not enough is being done by the Ukrainian government right now?
We want to see a little more, but let me say that I've also been encouraged by the fact that many people, independent observers from think tanks, from civil society, are confident that some things are happening. We just need to make sure that the pace doesn't slow down. There's always some resistance to reform, and not because of the EU, just because of Ukraine. Even in terms of the security situation, reforms will make the economy stronger and the country stronger to resist security threats. So there's no reason to postpone, and there's no reason to use the war as a justification not to go forward with the reform process. That would be a mistake for Ukraine.
You were the advisor to the Portuguese Prime Minister on reforms during one of the very difficult times in your country. With Portuguese experience in mind going through reforms, how do you think Ukraine will cope with reforms? How difficult it will be for Ukraine and the Ukrainians to go through these reforms?
Well, you have a moment here in Ukraine because of the war and because of the crisis where everyone has come together. Everyone is very much motivated, united. I think this is an asset that you have to use. We also had that in Portugal, but perhaps not to the same extent. I see people here calling for reforms every day. And so if the government responds, we're going to have a solid reform process. But of course, we also need social stability, and the government is the best place to find out how to combine both reform process with stability. And you cannot reform everything at once. I know that from Portugal.
Well, talking about the people, there was a lot of resistance. There were public strikes in Portugal during these recession times. How do you think Ukrainians will react to these reformist activities of the Ukrainian government?
Well, talking to Ukrainians here in Kiev, in Rivne, also in Mariupol, I see that people want change. They, of course, want this change to be applied equally to everyone. This is also what we heard in Portugal from our own public. But as long as it's done in a fair way, people really want reforms. It's what I keep hearing in Kiev and in other parts of the country.
Speaking about Mariupol, you have spent some time in Mariupol, which is almost a frontline city. What is your impression of the situation in eastern Ukraine? What is your assessment?
I was a bit surprised to see that we were the first government to go to Mariupol in 9 months. And I think my colleagues should also think about this. It's important to go there and to support the process, support Ukrainian territorial integrity, and support the ceasefire process. I'm very concerned about the civilian population in Mariupol, very moved by the small communities, tight communities living with very old traditions, peace-loving people. And they are, for example, in Cherokee, caught between the two sides and really in danger. So we need to make sure that the ceasefire is implemented. This is the first and the most important part of Minsk agreement. And 2 days ago, when I was there, it was the worst day of fighting since Minsk. So things need to move in that direction. And the EU needs to push. And needs to push the separatist side to accept a ceasefire, and civilian population in Mariupol and other places of the line should not be exposed to this anymore.
Do you think EU should do something more to push, to pressure Vladimir Putin?
This is being discussed every day. The important thing is that Ukraine should not think that the EU has moved away or is losing interest. It's completely false. The EU is as interested as ever been in this. It's a full priority for us to support Ukraine and to support Ukrainian territorial integrity. This is discussed. There are different possibilities. I'm not going to speculate on that. And you know that the sanctions are in place and they're having an impact on the Russian economy.
Well, let's hope that these sanctions will indeed have the impact even in the future. Mr. Secretary of State, thank you very much for joining us. This was Volodymyr Sulhu for Ukraine Today, together with the Secretary of State for European Affairs of Portugal, Mr. Bruno Maçães. Thank you for watching us.